Welcome to Help Nobody Told Me. I'm Shannon Johnson, and I am here today with my partner, Jasmine Shapiro. We are both with Berkshire Hathaway. We are realtors in the Chicagoland, and today we have a new guest for you.
Yes, we want to introduce Abby Bakos.
Yes.
Okay.
You got it.
And we are so excited to have you. You're going to be part of our team as well. So we wanted to introduce everybody to you, and you are a real estate attorney.
I am.
You have your own firm, right?
I do.
You practice real estate law, and you do estate planning.
Yes.
And also civil rights.
Civil rights litigation. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yes. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to being a part of the team and to doing this podcast. This is really exciting. Thank you.
So when you and I talked a couple weeks ago, I thought it was really interesting that you said your mom was a realtor.
Yes.
And you kind of grew up with this. It's like in your blood, right?
My mom was a realtor. She did that for most of my childhood growing up. It gave her, I think, the flexibility that she needed. And yeah, she worked for several brokerages. And I think I was telling you my first job was stuffing envelopes and answering phones at a Prudential Preferred Properties. Way back in the day. So yes, I'm very familiar with the real estate business. I have been. I didn't realize my legal career was going to take me in that direction, but here I am.
So you went to law school, you came out of law school, and it was just sort of natural, right?
Yeah, so I came out of law school. I fell in love. I was always a constitutional law nerd. I fell in love with that aspect of things, and I ended up going into a career in civil rights litigation where we primarily litigated issues related to the Fourth Amendment. I still do that to this day. That's kind of my passion, but when I went off on my own, I had to come up with a way to fund the cases that really meant a lot to me and mean a lot to society. And real estate, based on my experience and my family connections, was kind of a natural progression. I had some other colleagues in the field who were able to, help me through the first few years of doing that. Now I've been an attorney for 13 years, and I've been practicing real estate and trust and estates for the last almost 5 years, and the rest of it has been civil rights litigation. Yeah.
So was there a moment when all of a sudden you realized, like, okay, this is really important. I have to focus on legacy planning for everyday families?
Yeah, well, it really came more just from a need from people. I think a lot of people who I did real estate transactions with were hearing a lot about financial planning, a lot about trusts. A lot of people get a lot of information on the internet and suggestions to get trusts. So I started getting a lot of people in just inquiring about things like that. And that kind of, I dove into the practice area. All attorneys study trusts and estates and all of that when they're in law school. But it wasn't until people started expressing the need for that I really started diving into it and realizing how important it is, because it really is the most important thing that you can do for your loved ones. It really is. And I'm sure we'll go into more details as to why, but it became apparent to me when there was just this overwhelming need for the service.
Well, yeah, and I think we have to get really basic with that, because we talk about estate planning, and I think people go, well, I don't really have anything. I don't have an estate. I have my house and my car and, a little bit of money, not very much. I don't really need to do that, right? I don't need to do that, do I, Abby?
No, you do need to do it.
Why do I need to do that?
You do have an estate. So an estate sounds fancy, and it sounds like people that have mansions have estate. We all have estates. And the estates are your assets, right? It is your estate. It's all of your money. It's all of your assets. And the estate planning process is really the process of managing those assets and planning for the allocation of those assets for when or if you become incapacitated and or pass on. So people don't understand. They think, I don't have a lot. I only have a house and a car and a 401k. That's most people. Those are the situations where it's most important to have an estate plan, because if your children don't make a ton of money, in order for them to get your home when you pass, they're going to have to pay an attorney maybe $10,000 to probate your house to just be able to get your house.
And time.
Yes, and all the time, and the pressure and everything else. You have people that have just passed away. It's an emotional time for people. You want to take all of that out of the equation, take the stress out of the equation, and just plan things out that is going to benefit all of your loved ones. It's really important. People don't consider it,
really
I
And
think.
families sometimes fall apart because they never knew what mom or dad's wishes were.
Oftentimes.
And all of a sudden, like you said, it's stressful. There could be illness involved. It could be suddenly somebody passes.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to divide up the assets, but you don't know what did mom and dad really want.
And if we don't know what mom and dad want, then the law is going to tell you how things are going to be divided up. And that may be contrary to what they want. And that's one of the reasons that you shouldn't leave it up to the government to decide how your assets are allocated to your loved ones. You should really take control of that and do that on the front end.
And doesn't that take a long time if something's in probate to even get
Yeah.
that sorted, like versus if it's in a trust?
Yes, if it's in a trust, it's not going through probate at all. That's one of the benefits of having a trust.
Okay.
The probate process, it is the time, it is the money, it is the stress that you want to avoid generally. And that's one of the purposes of estate planning, is to avoid probate. So by putting property and assets into a trust, you're bypassing the probate process altogether. But there's other methods that lawyers can use to get your assets out of probate without necessarily doing a trust. So that's something and I'm happy to talk about it now, but a lot of people come to me and say, I want a trust, and they don't really understand what a trust is or why they want a trust. It's just because somebody on the internet told them you have to have a trust.
Right.
And so we try to clarify some of those things,
Or
through the
people
intake process.
People think a will is a trust.
Yes.
Same thing, and it's not.
And it's
Okay.
not, completely not.
So what are your options? If you come in and your average Joe Schmo and you got 2.3 kids and a dog, a house, a 401k, and 2 cars. Like, what are my options? What does that look like?
So you have a few options. The first option, and the option I think is probably the most advisable because it is not extremely expensive, but does the trick of avoiding probate, protecting your assets, and allocating your assets to who you want to allocate them to. That sort of a plan would be a will coupled with something called a transfer on death instrument for your property. So Illinois has a transfer on death instrument, which is a deed that gets recorded during your lifetime. And what it says is when the last, either if you own the property by yourself, then it's when you die. If you own the property with your spouse, it is when the last of the two of you passes, then the house is automatically transferred to whoever you designate on the transfer on death deed. So if you want your 2 children to have the house when the last of the 2 of you pass, 50-50 each, then that deed is already recorded. So when you pass, your heirs within 2 years of your passing have to file an acceptance of the property. And that's it. The property is theirs. There is no probate. They can sell the property. They can do whatever they want with the property. They can buy each other out. They can refinance to do that, whatever the case may be. And you've avoided that altogether. So as long as there's a transfer on death deed filed with the recorder's office, then the house gets taken out of the probate estate. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the probate estate to be smaller than $100,000. Because if you have assets in excess of $100,000 and you don't have a transfer on death instrument, or you don't have a trust, then that needs to go through probate. So what we try
it's
to
if
do
you
is
don't
move
have
things
this.
out. Right.
Right, if I understand you correctly, it's if you don't have it.
If you
Right.
don't have it. Yes. If you don't have a trust or a transfer on death deed that your house is put into, then you will have likely more than $100,000 in assets, so you will have to go through probate. And what does that mean when you go through probate?
Yeah.
So what it means is there is now a public record of your death and whatever creditors that may be have outstanding debts. Now the estate is going to have to pay the creditors because we have to post something in a bulletin that the creditors scour, and then they will put claims on the estate. So you're also exposing the estate to the decedent's debt.
Wow.
So is that enlightening?
I didn't know that.
Yes.
So is it like
So it's important.
A lien gets put on the house?
It's not a lien that gets put on the house. It's basically when you open the estate, it's for all the creditors to come in and say, hey, well, when he died, he had $10,000 in credit card debt. You owe me money, estate. And the estate has to take the assets of the decedent and pay off the decedent's debts.
So, and if you have a trust, you don't have to pay off that debt?
Right, because, well, if you put everything into the trust such that you don't have over $100,000 in assets, then yes, then you don't.
It doesn't go through
It doesn't
probate.
go through
It doesn't
probate.
get posted.
Doesn't get posted. Right.
Right.
So people don't realize really what this whole thing is, right? That's what it's about. We want to try to
And
protect the
especially if
property.
someone happens to get ill at the end of their life, there very well could be an immense amount of debt there due to medical things unavoidable at the end of your life that nobody knew was going to happen.
Right.
Like
Right.
maybe their credit history might have been perfect their whole life, and all of a sudden
Exactly.
something
And
catastrophic happens.
Exactly. So we want to try to plan for those things ahead of time, right?
So when should you start putting together a trust? Like when you buy a house, or
when you turn 18 years old.
Really?
Well, so the answer to that question depends on when you have assets.
Right.
Whenever you have assets, then you need to start managing that. But part of estate planning too is it's not just what happens when you die. It's also what happens when you become incapacitated. Who can make decisions for you? Who can access your records? Who can talk to your doctors? Who can pay your bills for you? Who can access your bank account? People don't think about these things until their loved one, their 20-year-old son, is in the hospital because he got in a car accident in college, and now mom can't talk to the doctors because HIPAA doesn't allow the doctor to talk to her because that son is an adult now. People don't think about that. So things like powers of attorney come into play much sooner than a trust, for example, or a transfer on death instrument or anything like that. So, that's part of the planning process.
So we're recording this in July. Those of you who are sending your kids off to college, those 18-year-olds, this is an important point.
Yes.
You need a power of attorney for your children.
You need a HIPAA waiver that your children sign. You need a power of attorney for them. Also, there's a lot going on with mental health. And substance abuse and things like that. Once your child is 18 years old, they're an adult in the eyes of the law. Yeah. And if you want to be able to, and they want you obviously, to be able to step in and help them and talk to doctors and whatever the case may be, you need to get that stuff set up. It's really important. Yeah. And something that not very many people consider.
Right. And why do people not know about this? Really?
So I've heard that some colleges at orientations are bringing it up to parents.
I was going to say feels like
it should be.
It should be brought up at orientation.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's.
But people don't realize. You don't. I mean, it's not that they don't. Really, you just don't think about it. You don't.
No.
Nobody thinks about the worst happening, and
we're worried about decorating their dorm room.
I know exactly. You're worried about the trip to Target, and how much we're gonna spend on your pillows. Yeah.
So if a mom and dad, husband and wife come to you and they say, I want to set up my trust, and you start talking to them and you find out they have maybe a 17-year-old, whatever, do you bring this up to them during that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I always bring it up.
Yeah. And what would you say the average age of somebody who comes to you that says, I want to, start building a trust? I mean,
usually it's a little older. I would say usually it's people in their 50s and 60s who have aging parents who are all of a sudden like, oh, my mom, like, what are we going to do about the house? what are we going to do about this?
Yep.
And then they're like, we don't have anything. What are we going?
Right.
What are we doing for our kids?
Right.
That's where and so it's people that are a little later in their lives, so they built up, they have a little something, but it's more coming to the forefront of their mind because they're taking care of their
Right.
aging parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally. So, what else? What kind of conflicts do you see within the family? Because not only do we have aging parents, we also have blended families now. There's sometimes mom or dad has been remarried and there's a new partner and there's stepchildren, and but there's a lot of family dynamics these days. It's not just one set of parents and 2 or 3 kids.
Yeah, I had to learn a lot as I was seeing a lot of blended families because, what I'm seeing some of more and more is something like husband owned a house, had 2 children, he's divorced, he gets remarried, wife moves into husband's house he purchased before the marriage. Now, wife wants to know, well, I want the house to go to my 2 children. And husband says, well, I had the house before we got married, and I'm 100% owner of the house. And then there's kind of this back and forth. So I get some people that are looking for counsel on how do I make sure that my children are protected, and how do I make sure I'm protected in this, because this wasn't my house. So I see a lot of that stuff going on. I see a lot of conflicts between, I'll have an elderly parent and then 2 siblings. One of the siblings is usually the parents, I don't know, the parent's parent, right?
Yeah. The caretaker.
Thank you. Yes, the caretaker. The
They're
person
doing all the work.
Yeah, and so sometimes there's a lot conflict between that child and the other child, and then I have the elderly person who's trying to make decisions, getting influenced by one or the other in different ways. So yeah, it can get kind of sticky with that stuff. I don't love those kinds of cases. I would say for the most part, most of my clients, I'm fortunate to say, are not really coming to me because they're trying to disown someone or disinherit someone. Usually it's just, I have 3 kids, they're really good, I just want to make sure that they all get, equal shares in the house and avoid probate.
But if there is, for some reason, a child that there may be a legitimate reason that they don't want this child, there's some sort of a history that they don't want this child to have access to their estate.
Yes.
Addiction is a big one, of course. How do they protect themselves from that?
So the way that you would protect yourself from that is by putting a trust in place. And you can do that necessarily for just the one child. And putting a trust in place it is good for people who need to set parameters on when the person gets the money, how much money the person gets, what the conditions are that the person needs to meet in order to get it. Do they need to be in treatment? Do they need to prove that they're sober? There's all sorts of things that we can kind of plan. We can't avoid everything and we can't anticipate everything, but we do see things with addictions in particular, or just irresponsible children. Somebody may feel like, hey, at 21 years old, I know my kid is going to blow 50 grand in 2 years, and that's not what I want for him. Or I want my kid to go to college, and I think this will entice them to do that. And that's a condition of this. So we can build all of that into a trust, and that's a situation where a trust would definitely be more appropriate for that individual, as opposed to a transfer on death instrument where we're just moving the house out.
And also, sometimes you have maybe a disabled child.
Yes.
How do you set up that trust so that that child is protected?
There are very specific special needs trusts that need to be set up for that specific situation. There are issues with disability and things like that. So that is real specific, and you should consult with an attorney who specifically works on special needs trusts.
Good to know.
They have a specific set of skills, and they are particularly knowledgeable in that area. I will not do those. I do not want to ever risk something like that for someone. It's just not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. And I love that you're going to say,
Right.
this is not what I do. Here's who you need to go see.
Yep.
Like,
and it's also with accounting. So when we do an estate plan, oftentimes I will work with my client's financial planner and or accountant to make sure that we're not doing anything or moving anything around that's going to negatively impact them in that way.
tax-wise or anything like that.
Right.
Gotcha. That's pretty important.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about residential real estate.
Yes. Let's do it.
So, how does your legal expertise protect buyers and sellers in this competitive market?
So the attorney comes in all Illinois contracts after the offer has been signed. So I'll use a standard contract,
Yes.
but then we have that 5-day attorney review period where the attorneys, and usually it extends a bit longer than that, where the attorneys can negotiate some terms. Being familiar with this market, being familiar with the tax rates, being familiar with the different pitfalls that we see that are specific to this market is definitely important for a real estate attorney. And when you do them often enough, you start figuring that out and learning what you need to know to properly protect people in this market. And the Chicago market is completely different, by the way, from the Wheaton market in the suburbs.
Right.
And I do a lot with the Chicago market. I have a lot of agents in the city, so I'm familiar with both, but it is very different, and people sometimes don't think hard about getting a good residential real estate attorney, but it can really matter when you're dealing with particularly these huge sums of money and a very wordy contract that is not always, clear and easy to understand.
If you don't read it every day, like those of us who are in the business, we're like, oh no, well, like we do use this all the time. Why are you questioning that?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's different from an outside perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
So for listeners who are going through a move and estate planning at the same time, and sometimes that happens because they realize, oh, we're moving, and oh yeah, there's this transition in our life, and we don't have an estate in place. How can they make that a smooth process without completely stressing themselves out?
So the best thing to do is before, I would say if you're thinking about putting your house on the market, it doesn't hurt to go see an estate planning attorney. And if you decide that a trust is a good thing to have, Illinois allows for unfunded trusts. That means we can create the trust, but you not fund it with your new house until you close on your new house. So you can create the trust in advance, and then when you close on the house, you're going to purchase the new house in the name of the trust. That way we're not having to transfer things with deeds from your personal names to the name of the trust. Some people specifically get a trust to try to have some anonymity. They don't want people to know that they are owning this house. So we build the trust before you move. You then have the trust ready to go. You purchase the new house in the anonymous name of the trust. You can name it whatever you want, pretty much. And then when you purchase it in the name of the trust, then the trust is now funded with the house. And you're done.
So what if you had a trust in your first house, let's say, let's call it house 1 and that was 2, and now you're thinking about moving, putting your house on the market, downsizing, upsizing, whatever, moving out of state. Can you update your trust then, or?
Yeah, so you would just purchase the new house in the name of the trust.
Okay.
It's the trust that is owning the property. So the
Okay.
trust owned your prior property, the trust is going to own your new property.
Okay.
And it's just going to matter that you make sure that the trust is titled, or the house is titled in the name of the same trust that you owned the previous house in.
Okay, and let's say you had a trust put together 20 years ago. Do you need to keep updating it
Yes.
as you age, or are there laws that say you have to update it every so many years?
So the one thing about trust that people don't understand is that, yes, you have to be on top of it. You have to update it. Every time you get new cars, the cars have to go into the name of the trust. A lot of people change their bank accounts into the name of the trust. So their checking account is no longer their name. It is in the name of the trust. So it's very important that you're consistently keeping things updated within the trust. You want to keep your addresses updated within the trust and everything else. It's very important. If you don't, it really complicates things if you pass, and if anyone raises an issue about things not being clear, then there could be chaos in the process, which is everything that you're trying to avoid in doing the trust. So it's really important that you keep it updated. A lot of people don't want to do that because they don't want to keep paying an attorney. They don't want to keep asking questions. And a lot of people are not totally comfortable with a trust owning their property instead of them owning their property, because that is really what you're doing. And so, yeah, there's a lot of reasons, I think, why.
So even getting a new car, you need to update your trust.
You need to title the car in the name of the
title
trust.
the car. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because everything flows through the trust. You want to make sure that if you don't, then that counts towards your $100,000 balance.
Wow, I better talk to my husband. He got a new car. I don't think he did that.
It's really important. Now, so some people are like, look, even with my 2 cars, I'm way under $100,000. So maybe it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it always does.
It doesn't take long.
Exactly.
Cars are
It doesn't take
expensive
long
now.
for that to add up. And
Yes.
you don't really want that being questionable, because if someone challenges it, it could become a bigger problem.
Right. Well, and I think also when you talk about updating the trust, someone hasn't looked at it in 20 years, and someone that's involved in that trust it has passed away, or the executor of the trust, maybe there's been a rift, and you don't want them involved in your trust, and so you just need to stay on top of those things on a regular basis.
You really do. If you decide that a trust is a way to go, then that's what you have to do. And some people are put off by that and then purposely don't want a trust for that reason. And they're expensive. They're expensive for an attorney to create a trust. If an attorney is creating anything that's worth anything, the attorney is not going to be charging $1,000 for a trust. Trusts are over $3,000, sometimes up to $6,000.
Okay. I mean, but to protect
Yes.
everything that you own,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
perspective-wise, that's not
Yes.
a large investment.
I agree.
I think that's how you have to think about that.
Yes.
And that's also really, it's a gift to your family.
Absolutely.
And I could say, we just finished a whole, an estate that just sold, and it was not a big estate. This was a, $350,000 home, but it was so smooth for the children who also, they're not, it's not a rich family. This was what the family left them.
Right.
It was this little $350,000 home.
Right.
But it made everything so smooth. It just,
Exactly. Right.
smooth as butter.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise it's a waiting process. It's an expensive waiting process. You have to find an attorney. You have to fill out paperwork. And you're usually grieving the death of somebody at the same time.
Exactly.
And nobody really wants to be dealing with that.
So instead, they were able to walk through this process smoothly and know that their relative had prepared this for them, and it was a gift to them.
Yeah.
And I think you have to look at it like that.
I agree.
All right, so let's say there's a listener that tuned in, heard what you had to say. They're not quite ready to contact an attorney. What other tools or something that they could do a little research prior to maybe contacting an attorney? Or would you say it's just best to get advice from an attorney?
I think it probably is best to get advice from an attorney. I think the internet can be very deceiving. I think that you should certainly be able to find an attorney who offers a free consultation. That should be, at least in my opinion, at least the way I do things, a little bit more, than just taking, your name and other information, what I generally do is I send out a questionnaire to anybody who wants a consultation, because if I'm going to give you a consultation, I'm going to give you something that's worth something.
Okay.
And I can't if I don't have a clear picture of your assets and your needs and your goals,
Right.
and what you're trying to accomplish. So, and some people, but yes, I think going to an attorney is always preferred to the online thing.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So you have them fill out that questionnaire before you sit down and talk to them.
Yes.
So that you have some information and some background, and then we can discuss.
And then I
more
want to make a
specifically.
recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
plan
I'm
of
going
action.
to, I don't want to waste people's time. I think our time is valuable. If you're really not invested in it, then you're not going to fill out the questionnaire, because it's a long questionnaire, and I need to know who are all your family and what are all your assets and what are all, it's intense. But then we can actually have a productive conversation where I can make recommendations, quote you a price, and, answer all of your questions with full knowledge behind me. It just makes more sense.
No, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
That's why I just,
Yeah.
understand the process.
Yeah. That's
For
just
sure.
mine. I don't know how the others work. But.
Abby, this has been great. There has been a
Good.
wealth of information here.
Wonderful.
And we will put your contact information into our show notes if anybody wants to reach out to you.
Sounds
Absolutely.
great.
But I think the takeaway is consult an attorney, right?
Yes. That's always the takeaway.
Before you think you're a millionaire.
Yes. Do it sooner than later.
Sooner than
Soon as
later.
your kid becomes 18, I think that's probably a good time, if you don't already have an estate plan, to go and get your releases for your 18-year-old kids, and then figure out at the very least powers of attorney for you and your spouse,
Right.
so you guys can pay your bills and do your stuff with ease, I should say. Yeah.
Well, welcome to our team.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I
we
appreciate
hope
it.
you tune in next week for another episode of Help Nobody Told Me.
And be sure to like and follow and subscribe and all those big words. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.